Welcome to Event Experience by Bizzabo, the podcast where we bring the best and brightest event experience leaders together to share stories, tips, and lessons learned from creating some of the world's biggest events. I'm Rachel Moore, your podcast host. We did it, folks! We're so thrilled to bring you this, the 100th episode of the Event Experience podcast, and our featured guest is the co-founder and chief marketing officer of Bizzabo, Alon Alroy. Take a stroll with us through the creation of the podcast, the challenges our guests have faced in today's evolving event landscape, and Bizzabo's vision for the event tech industry. As always, this episode brings you another strong dose of event experience. I have a very special guest joining us today, the co-founder and chief marketing officer of Bizzabo, the event experience operating system that we all know powers the immersive in-person, virtual, and hybrid event experiences of world-leading brands. He works closely with thousands of event executives and fellow CMOs to deliver world-class event programs. My guest today is Alon Alroy. Alon, I'm so excited to have you join this episode of Event Experience.
Hi, Rachel, and thank you for having me. I'm excited as well.
I'm asking the same questions we ask all of our podcast guests, so this will be super insightful. When you're going to be on the ground on event day, what are your go-to shoes that you know are going to save your feet for the whole day?
Well, I'm not an organizer, so I probably don't attend as many events as organizers. Having said that, I like to keep it pretty casual. I don't know, as an entrepreneur, we're pretty casual. So usually you're going to see me with a pair of sneakers. If I feel fancy, maybe a Cole Haan, like a brand I really like, but pretty casual.
You're aligned with several of our guests because I've heard a few people say they're so glad sneakers seem to be the trend now where it's not too casual, it just fits.
Yep.
Cole Haan definitely has gotten some good shout outs as well. So I love how people have common shoe preferences. Is there anything that you're listening to, watching, or reading these days that you can't put down?
I have 3 kids. The oldest is a 7-year-old boy called Noam, and he became obsessed with the NBA recently. So the only thing, when I have time to watch, when he's awake, I have no choice. So we watch a lot of basketball and NBA games. And because of him, I now know way more players than I used to. So this is the one thing that I cannot do right now.
Kids have that influence too. By the way, I don't follow basketball, but Denver Nuggets over here, and they probably figured in a little bit to some of the games you're playing. So I just like them.
They're pretty good.
Oh, does he have a favorite team?
We live in New York, so the New York Knicks, and luckily for us, they have a pretty good season.
Excellent. So that does make it a little bit more entertaining when your team's winning. So that's awesome. Is there a particular social post or a piece of media or even a hot take about events that you found interesting lately?
Well, I'll use the opportunity to say that my favorite podcast is this one. And also the Bizzabo blog is just an amazing piece of educational knowledge. And I really recommend to subscribe to it. Other 2 pieces that I read recently, one was from the Opus Agency newsletter. And then I also saw Julia Solaris post about a similar topic, which is event registration. The views they shared about the need to simplify registration is very aligned with our thinking and with how we build our registration platform. So on one hand, super robust with many options. On the other hand, the simplest one out there. And this is like thinking about product and innovation. That is the beauty, how to make the complex easy.
Yes. I saw that post too. And I remember thinking the more you click, it takes me forever to register and people are gonna be like, I'm tired now. So super important. Julius gets brought up quite a bit too when people say they're following stuff out in the universe. Excellent point there. Let's dig into why this is pretty exciting. We're recording with you as the guest the 100th episode of Event Experience of the whole podcast. I know one reason this is so special, this was a project very near and dear to your heart. We've been doing this podcast with 100 discussions over 5 years, all with the goal of supporting today's event planners. I know this is a big ask here, but can you sum up for us how you feel about this milestone, this 100th episode, and then most importantly, what your hopes are for how it can help our listeners of the podcast?
First, I'll say that it is crazy to think that this is the 100th episodes. We had the idea to launch a podcast dedicated to event experience leaders 5 years ago, at a time in which podcasts were not that popular. So it was actually one of the first meaningful podcasts for the event industry. When I reflect over the different voices and people and stories we've hosted, I'm honestly very proud, I think, and hope that by sharing these stories, we provide a lot of value to our audience. I do believe that because I listen to almost each and every one of them, that it's just an amazing way to staying ahead in this evolving and super dynamic industry. When I reflect back, I think on the first 50 episodes, things were changing, people were changing. We could bring people together and shine a light on a spotlight on those who bring people together and provide them a stage and a platform. During the pandemic, there was just a strong imperative to be a thought leader. We took a break because we had an opportunity to share our voice in the form of virtual events. And we wanted to make the most impact we can in terms of thought leadership and to provide help to the community. I'm not sure if you remember, we ran a very big event on May 2020. It was just 2.5 months after it all happened that we called Almost in Person. That was one of the industry's first, if not the first, virtual events at a time in which it was also the first event we ever ran as a company, the first virtual event. Bizzabo was founded as a platform for in-person events, definitely not for virtual events. And at some point, we heard about so many teams being laid off, and we're like, what could we do to show them that there is a way to actually add value? So we said, let's just run our own event. So we took a pause on the podcast and we ran this 6,000 people event, and it was attended by people from Facebook to Bloomberg to, like, honestly, any company you can imagine. And we were praying that everything will work. And then people reached out to us, thanking us for showing them a way, and then also admitting that because of that, it empowered them and motivated them to present a plan for virtual events. And by that, they actually retained their job. Connecting it to the podcast is just a way to share thought leadership and sometimes the stories of the unsung heroes that are behind these events that oftentimes they don't get the right credit. So this podcast is about giving them all of the credit and allowing them to share the magic that is behind events.
It's great to hear this too, because I think it really does speak to not just how Bizzabo itself as a company with the podcast and with events had to pivot, did pivot, how everybody in the events industry was forced into pivoting, and whether or not you did that well, eventually everybody had to change direction. And I really do appreciate too the thought that saying, gosh, you talk about, I think it was March 2020 was right when the whole world stopped, went into lockdown globally. So no more in-person events. To have Bizzabo deliver that virtual event so quickly on the heels of that new existence in the pandemic, what an accomplishment and a perfect way to pivot. Y'all knew what was needed in the moment. And I love that y'all delivered that. And now today, I think you keep delivering, which we're going to get into in a second. But I really do think, and of course I'm biased because I host the podcast, but you're right. We have these conversations with these event professionals, designers, leaders, strategists, CMOs, and everything, where they're sharing their experience now that we're in this new world, this new way of being after the pandemic. And how much has, gosh, I know it's a rhetorical question a bit, but Bizzabo, how much has it helped these leaders pivot to what they need to be today? It's pretty amazing.
Thank you. You said that we knew what needs to get done. Honestly, we did not know. We decided to take a bold bet and the decision that virtual will be a thing. And we released Bizzabo's virtual solution on March 22nd, meaning we had 2 weeks to actually put it together. And we had to tell our salespeople to wait a week if someone is asking for a demo because it was not really ready. We ended up building a very robust platform that today is just allowing a lot of flexibility and kind of like switching between formats and so on. And sometimes you need to take these kind of like bold decisions without even knowing, anticipating what you think people will need. And at that point in time, it was the right decision.
Obviously. And yeah, I love that you mentioned that. I think our whole listenership is used to got to take a big swing once in a while. You hope it pays off. Obviously, it did. So I teased this out just a minute ago. I want to segue into what is a new milestone for Bizzabo and really for the events industry. And this one has to do with Gartner. Bizzabo has been named a leader in the inaugural Gartner Magic Quadrant for event technology platforms. That just rolls off the tongue. I am picturing a magic wand right here, but I think that's intentional. And so that's a major deal. That's a huge deal. And it's not just a huge deal for Bizzabo. It's also a huge deal that Gartner created this specifically to address event technology platforms. And so I want to ask you a little bit about this. So Bizzabo was positioned furthest among all other solutions on the completeness of vision axis. And that is supposed to reflect the vendor's innovation, whether the vendor drives or follows the market, and if the vendor's view of how the market will develop matches the Gartner perspective. Again, quite an acknowledgement to know Bizzabo is the farthest on that axis, ticking all those dots. Can you share with us how Bizzabo develops vision? Again, it mentions driving or following. Y'all are obviously driving. How Bizzabo develops vision and innovation to be so aligned and be able to earn that recognition from Gartner?
First, about Gartner, it is a moment of celebration and like a milestone, honestly, not only for Bizzabo, but for the industry.
Yeah.
Over the past 2 years, both Forrester and Gartner, two of the world's biggest research firms, decided to start covering the category of event technology. It means a big deal to the maturity of the sector. It means that enterprise buyers and enterprise organizations are now leaning on these two giants to inform their decisions. So there are now a group of analysts that are constantly reviewing and seriously dug into the vendors to then provide their recommendations and their views. In both of them, Bizzabo was named the leader alongside Cvent and Rainfocus. And honestly, for a company that is much smaller than Cvent to be named a leader twice and then to be recognized as furthest away in terms of vision when you have the 800-pound gorilla is one, very gratifying. And two, I think it sends a message from Gartner that they really values like how we look at the market and how we look at the future. To a question about how do we develop the vision, the last time I was on the podcast was when we announced the launch of the Event Experience Operating System. It was a moment in time in which we truly, I think all of us truly felt that event technology needs to be reinvented in a way. So many different event formats, large virtual events, but then they're getting canceled. Like a minute after, you can pivot to something small and then again to in-person and again to virtual. And in a way, we thought that, you know what, it's really not about event management software. And this is how the category was named by Cvent, who was definitely the pioneer. It's not about helping people managing events. It's about helping people creating experiences. It's actually event experience. It's not event management. And in a way, operating system, like we need to provide the keys to event organizers to design whatever experience they want to design and to provide them the flexibility to truly bring their ideas and dreams to life. Because at the end of the day, event organizers are really super creative people, and they need to create experiences that will matter, that will be memorable. And as a technology vendor, it's about, again, giving them the powers to do that. Yeah. So it's not about helping you manage your event. It's about carving your path to event greatness in a way without sounding like too fluff. But that's where we came with the vision to the event experience operating system and approaching things differently. And I think the vision at the end of the day is to truly allowing these organizers to run events that drive impact, whether it is impact on revenue, impact on relationships, impact on the brand. We do that by honestly listening very carefully to our customers and prioritizing not only fancy features, but actually things that will drive the event outcome and the business outcome. Over the past year, most event tech were obsessed with AI. We knew that our customers are really asking for more advancements in the world of registration. We prioritize registration, and we hold that temptation to be cool in order to provide impact.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to get to AI and we have some things with AI, but I believe that the revolution with AI should be there whenever we identify a way to influence impact and big time versus just injecting some ChatGPT, clicking on a magic wand to turn a sentence into a paragraph. Like, you don't really need that in a meaningful way. Like, it's a nice to have. Another big piece of the vision. So one is to truly have a very selective hearing and ensuring that you can really deliver on what people ask. But then it's also about anticipating the needs before they come up. And I'll give you an example for that I think really demonstrates how we think. At the middle of the pandemic, we kind of go back in time again. There were no virtual events. We were confident. We had a very high level of conviction because we've been in the industry for many years, and we knew, like, that one, it was not a bet. Like, we felt it in our body. We knew that people will go back to in-person events, that there is no replacement to the handshake, to that in-person meeting, looking each other in the eye. We also knew that events will need to change, that there will need to be way more focus on experience because virtual events will not go away, which means that content will still be very accessible. So if it's just the content, people would be able to consume it from home. And at the time in which everyone were looking right, we went shopping and we bought a smart wearable, Click, like we acquired the company, to really make events more experiential and more data-driven. In a way, people at the time described them as Google Analytics for in-person events because it has a very robust data layer. So talking about vision and like being bold is the middle of the pandemic to acquire an in-person company that is not a regular company. It's a very innovative technology. And I think now the world is very much like around in-person. The demand for Click is through the roof. That is just a moment in time that I think really gives the story of how we think about the future and the industry. So I hope I answered the question.
We'll be right back with more event experience after the break.
Hey event enthusiasts, are you hungry for the latest event trends and insights? Pop open your laptop, pull up your favorite browser, and head to bizzabo.com/blog. That's bizzabo.com/blog for fresh perspectives and expert takes on what's shaping the world of events. Plus, subscribe to get blog updates sent to your inbox every 2 weeks and never miss an article. Do more that matters with Bizzabo.
We're back with Alon Alroy to celebrate a big win for Bizzabo in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for Event Technology. You did mention anticipating, and that I think can be where you take the biggest swing, right? Where that might be somewhat guesswork, but you are basing it on data, on findings that you already have access to, and then you're like, okay, let's see where things go. But the other piece that you spoke of was that customer centricity. And I know this for a fact. And believe me, anyone who's listening to this, I do have a little insight into this because Bizzabo listens. I know that this company makes a big priority of looking at and listening to customer feedback. You do surveys, you're listening to people who attend your events. What is mattering the most to them? What's keeping them up at night? And that seems to really feed that other aspect of how you meet the need, and you are developing, like you said, it's not just, hey, we can do something, let's do it, regardless of what the customer wants. You really do centralize the customer in your thinking. And speaking of that, as part of Gartner's evaluation process, their analysts held confidential interviews with Bizzabo customers and considered Bizzabo's reviews on Gartner Peer Insights, and that provides verified customer ratings and peer reviews. I'm looking at Peer Insights now, and I see that Bizzabo is this is a big deal. Bizzabo is the only event technology platform that 100% of reviewers say they would recommend. All of them, 100%. Can you share more about how Bizzabo is achieving this level of customer satisfaction? That is astronomical, by the way.
Thank you. I need to take a screenshot of that because in the event technology industry, getting 100% people satisfied is a challenge.
Right.
But I'll take it. First, like a word on just customer happiness. We have a job because we have customers. And we wake up in the morning because of them.
Mm-hmm.
Both you and I, we are marketers. And we think about campaigns and creatives and messaging and so on. But at the end of the day, the best marketing in the world is happy customers. So if you want your company to grow, one thing to do is to invest in your customers. Now, I do believe that you're only as good as your product and the user experience, because at the end of the day, in event technology, we're a product company. We sell product. It's true, but it's not the only value we provide. The podcast is not a product. The podcast is honestly helping people become better at their job by making them more well-rounded event professionals. So we provide a lot of value that is not product, but at the end of the day, people will take a decision whether to use Bizzabo or a competitor. And we really made it a point to just lead with ease of use, a lot of flexibility, and a lot of transparency. I believe that these customers share that they really value us also because of that understanding and also because of how we make them feel. What do I talk about is that the event industry, and I think you need to be in the industry for many years to really understand that. It's an industry that is driven by relationships. At the end, we bring people together to events to create relationships. And therefore, it should be served with a relationship-first mindset. And the importance of relationships, specifically within the event industry, is just critical because event organizers are so stressed, and you're going to see them at the moments where they are exposed, where they're stressed, when they don't have time. And this is what we call the money time. This is where you need to deliver and to honestly be there for them when things go well and when things do not go well. And so whether these are our CSMs and like on-site professionals, that we really try that all of them will have a good understanding of events because we think that it creates a lot of empathy. We have many ex-planners actually working on our team. And either way, we look at ourselves like Avis, the car rental, like we try harder. We try harder, and because of that, we're going to win.
Do you have an example of how your team put that into practice? Being customer-centric, caring about that relationship, how you're making the customer feel. I know you've got that new tech click out as well. Is there an example you can give us about how your team put this into practice, put this into play?
One recent example is a great, amazing customer called CMP, Customer Management Practice, and our Click customer as well. They've been using like a solution to provide lead capture for exhibitors. They've been using it for many years. Everyone were used to it and so on. And for them, it was a no-brainer because it was a plug and play. They did not need to deal with it. We identify a way for them to actually generate way more sponsorship revenue by thinking about technology a little bit different. We show them how to potentially use Click to do that. So it was honestly not just about selling them Click. It's about truly understanding how they operate, disrupt their thinking a little bit. And fast forward a few months, they now use Click almost at every event, and they truly revolutionized how they operate as a team. And they're super happy, and we were able to help them just generate way more sponsorship revenue in the domain that usually we do not really touch. This is just a great example of listening carefully, caring enough to challenge their thinking, and then working with them hand in hand to show them the way and be there for them and do some kind of like change management.
You're giving me great segues into the things that I want to ask you about, because you are really approaching this customer vendor relationship holistically. This isn't purely transactional. There's so much more to it. So another thing, and to support that, Gartner noted that the Bizzabo platform has an ability to support the needs of complex event marketing teams. That's a really operative phrase right there. Mid to large size B2B organizations, and specifically, it highlights the strengths in speaker and sponsor portals, app-based networking and communications, and of course, MarTech integrations, the thing that we all care so much about, especially marketing operations. And in the rapidly evolving market, Bizzabo allows event organizers to pivot easily. We talked about pivoting earlier. That's super important. And allows them to focus on creating those experiences and not just event formats. Again, I love the word complex because that really does describe today's event marketing teams. It's of every variety, every size, could mean one person all the way to a very large team of varying roles across different teams within departments. So with all that, I want to ask you this question. What do you see as the challenges of today's marketing teams, those complex marketing teams? And how can marketing leaders ensure that those teams are supported for all the event stuff they need to accomplish?
That's a complex question. And
It really is for complex marketing teams.
I'm very happy that you actually read the report. So thank you for that.
Of course.
And honestly, I believe that the role of the event organizer became so much more complex because events have become more complex. As an organizer of like in 2024, compared to 2019, you now need to think about so many different formats. You need to become an expert in broadcasting and virtual and ticket prices and AI. And honestly, it's crazy. So the role evolved, it became more complex. Not only that, with the economic climate, event professionals, like everyone else, are now being asked to operate on a very tight budget to prove ROI, a term that was not maybe that comfortable with a few years ago. And in addition, historically, they were asked about event KPIs. What was the attendee NPS? How many people showed up? And today, you still need these KPIs to kind of demonstrate success and to improve from one event to another. But the questions are, what kind of pipeline did you create? How many ARR, how much did you touch? How many customers were in the room? Show me the business impact. What was the impact on the brand and so on? So they had to truly evolve their thinking and capabilities and knowledge. Add to that everything that is going on with AI, with all of these new email regulations, a cookieless future. Digital is just becoming so challenging, which puts, in my mind, more pressure on events to deliver because it's more difficult to get results from the digital channels and the Googles and Facebooks of the world and ads, which means more pressure on events. You need to navigate the tension between creating impactful moments, that is the expectation, and doing it on a budget. And
Oh, man.
you need to balance between how do I prioritize. I always say that it's better to prioritize an impactful moment versus doing another mediocre event. I'll also share, thinking about challenges and how to navigate everything I described earlier, is that the attention span of buyers is becoming very limited.
Yep.
They're constantly being distracted by the next shiny toy, which means that your event program must evolve as well. And you need to meet those buyers and customers way more frequently, maybe like the old model of you could potentially work the whole year on an annual conference, meet them once, and that's it. Now, events are more accessible. You can easily run webinars and larger virtual gatherings and dinners and so on. And because of that, what I recommend is to just ensure you have a very robust year-round event program that offers several touch points throughout the customer journey.
Yeah.
From top of funnel to bottom of the funnel, small exec dinners, etc., etc. And internally, because again, the challenge is to operate on a budget and less is more and all that, is to just over-communicate event impact and business impact to get into although it's not the comfort zone of many planners, but where the marketer had to partner with those who know how to do it and to just find ways to quantify the impact on revenue, the impact on brand, the impact on the company's relationships, and get a seat at the revenue table. If you don't get a seat at the revenue table, suddenly you're going to see your budget over time disappear.
Mm-hmm. You brought up a key point there, and this is certainly a common thread we've heard and seen across so many of our guests on the podcast, is that not only, and you mentioned it earlier, the complexity of what an event marketer, event designer, an event planner has to deliver has increased because there's all these other pieces. One of those complexities is that event professionals have to be educators as well. You just talked about it in the last point, because it's like, not only are you designing an event and delivering an event and reporting back on an event, but you have to educate your internal stakeholders, your sponsors, your partners on all the ways that the event you just created and crafted is crucial to the business bottom line, to revenue, and to success. And with that, so I have a final question to ask you as we slowly approach the end of our time together. Alon, I would say you have a very unique vantage point. Bizzabo as a platform is powering hundreds of events on a monthly basis. Can you share with us a trend that you're seeing across Bizzabo's customer events? Would love to get some insight on that. Can you spill the tea a little bit?
That is an interesting one. It's related to some of the things that I talked about earlier. I definitely see leading brands, like those that we truly appreciate how they think, and I believe that these are the companies that are being perceived as thought leaders as well. Like if you look at the technology companies, I'm talking about HubSpot or publishers. I'm thinking Wall Street Journal, Financial Times. Like these organizations understand that we are in a different time, and they understand the role of events. And I think the evidence is that the Financial Times, for example, they grew their event team by a lot over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
It tells me that the team is just doing a great job to show the impact of their events on many different formats, many different sizes, and so on. So they validated kind of like year-round operating at scale and doing it on like an amazing way. The HubSpots, the Wall Street Journals of the world, like a trend I see from them is truly start treating their conferences like festivals in a way, or a festival-like experience. And they are super experiential with way more activations than in the past. So it's really not only about the content or the main stage. Things happen all the time. And I'm also happy to see them leveraging technology such as Click and smart wearables to then collect data. So it's not only about the experience, because I think we are all experiential people. That's why we are in this profession. But to the intersection of experience and data, to then translate that into kind of like data-informed decisions is really the holy grail. There is one thing to invest a lot of money and have people have a great moment. It's another thing to add a data layer on it and see what actually drove foot traffic.
Yeah.
What was the message that caused people to go to that other room? And measuring the ROI for a sponsor based on some activities they did, and then also just like lighting up the audience through lights on the wearables to create just moments that you cannot experience anywhere else. And I think these kind of like next-gen data-driven event teams that are leaning on a new way of collecting data through smart wearables is just a trend that I believe is only at its kind of like beginning and infancy. And we're going to see more and more super creative usage of this data in many creative concepts.
That's great. I think it's pretty cool that we're able to get your insights from on high. You are seeing the whole expanse of all these events that Bizzabo is supporting across industries. Like we said, you have such a customer focus, all of these brands of all these types across industries of all these different size of event teams being supported by Bizzabo's technology and also the teams behind Bizzabo, which is really amazing. So we're going to have you back for another future episode, right? Because you need to give us those insights again onto how everything has changed with a lot of the groundwork you just mentioned, the ways that we can pioneer forward. And just a quick note to our listeners, we are going to link to in the show notes. We have the link to episode 50 where Alon appeared. He referenced that earlier where he was talking about where we were at that time. We'll also have a great webinar about CMP, that example you gave us. We're going to link that in the show notes as well. And finally, easiest question of all, where can our listeners find and follow you online, Alon?
On LinkedIn. Honestly, I think that social network among professionals is just one. And so I'm not that active on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. The only place I actually spend a meaningful amount of time is LinkedIn. And definitely would love to connect.
Very awesome. And everyone, I encourage you to connect with Alon. We'll obviously include his LinkedIn in the show notes. Thanks again to Alon Alroy for joining us on the 100th episode of Event Experience. And thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love to hear it. Connect with us on social and subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you're listening. Also, don't forget to share the show with your colleagues and friends. You can find transcripts of each episode and key takeaways on bizzabo.com/podcast. On behalf of the team, thank you. We'll gather again soon for the next 100 episodes of Event Experience.